My wife of 7 years, Sarah, always had a tell when she was lying. She would meticulously clean the kitchen grout with an old toothbrush. 2 months ago, I came home from a business trip a day early and found our kitchen smelling sharply of bleach, the grout blindingly white. She wasn't cleaning because she forgot to pick up the dry cleaning. She was cleaning because she had just scrubbed a man's cologne off her skin, a scent I recognized lingering in our bedroom. It was Tom Ford Out Wood, I know, because I bought that exact cologne for my brother-in-law, Mark, for Christmas. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. Instead, I stood in the doorway, smiled, kissed her cheek, and told her I missed her. That was the exact moment my marriage ended, and my second full-time job, destroying her life legally, systematically, and absolutely, began. I'm an actuary. My entire life revolves around calculating risk, predicting outcomes, and ensuring the math always favors my employer. Now, I was applying those same principles to my wife. The first thing I did was buy a digital voice recorder and a miniature dash cam, hardwiring it into the console of her Audi while she slept. I didn't need to wait long for the payoff. Within 48 hours, the audio picked up a phone call. It was Mark. They weren't just sleeping together, they were complaining about how much longer they had to wait until the payout. That was twist number 1. This wasn't just an affair, it was an exit strategy. I requested a full discrete credit report on myself and pulled our joint bank statements for the last 3 years. The math wasn't mathing. Sarah managed our day-to-day finances while I handled the investments. On the surface, our joint checking looked fine, but I noticed a recurring transfer of $850 every 2 weeks to a vendor listed as Apex Consulting. I dug into the state business registry. Apex Consulting was an LLC registered in Delaware. Twist number 2 dropped when I pulled the LLC's incorporation documents. The registered agent wasn't Sarah. It wasn't Mark. It was me. Sarah had stolen my identity, using my social security number and an old digital signature to set up a shell company. She and Mark had been siphoning my salary into this account for nearly 2 years, hiding over $40,000 in plain sight. If the IRS audited us, I would be the one going to federal prison for tax fraud and hiding assets. The betrayal bypassed my heart and went straight to my survival instincts. I hired a forensic accountant, a guy named Vance who charged $400 an hour and looked like he hadn't slept since 2018. I gave him read-only access to every account I possessed. They're sloppy, Vance told me over a secure Zoom call 3 days later. The LLC is funding a joint brokerage account under Mark's name. But here's the kicker, man. They're heavily leveraged in tech options. Mark's a terrible trader. They've lost about 30% of what they stole. I needed absolute leverage, which meant I needed more than financial records. I needed to blindside them. That weekend, we attended a family barbecue at Mark and my sister-in-law Chloe's house. Sarah played the doting wife, rubbing my shoulders while I drank a beer. Mark clapped me on the back, thanking me for the referral I'd given his logistics company a year ago. While everyone was in the backyard, I slipped into Mark's home office to use the bathroom. I noticed his iPad unlocked on his desk. I tapped the screen. iMessage was open. Not to Sarah, but to an unsaved number. I took a photo of the screen with my phone. When I ran the number through a reverse lookup later that night, it belonged to a 23-year-old barista at the coffee shop near Mark's office. Twist number 3, Mark was cheating on my cheating wife. I sat on that information. Knowledge is only power if you deploy it at the exact right millisecond. A week later, Sarah sat me down on the couch, her eyes welling with tears. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, pulling out a positive test. She expected me to cry with joy. We had been trying for a year. Instead, I felt a cold, dark amusement wash over me. Twist number 4. 3 years ago, after a severe bout of epididymitis, I went to a specialist. The scarring was extensive. I was diagnosed as completely, irreversibly sterile. I never told Sarah because, at the time, she was adamant about not wanting kids until her 30s. I had planned to bring it up when she was ready, Maybe talk about IVF or adoption. I'm so happy, I lied, pulling her into a hug. We need to secure our future, Sarah, more than ever. She took the bait instantly. Actually, I spoke to a financial advisor, she said smoothly. With the baby coming, he suggested we restructure our assets. Protect the house from liability by putting it in a trust and maybe signing a post-nuptial agreement just to shield our personal accounts from your corporate liabilities. She was feeding me the exact script Mark had likely written for her. They wanted to isolate the house, our biggest asset, and use a post-nup to legally sever my claim to the Apex Consulting money, effectively laundering the stolen funds through a divorce. That's a brilliant idea, I said. Send me the paperwork your guy draws up. The next day, she emailed me a PDF. I forwarded it directly to my lawyer, a ruthless bulldog named Elias. Elias reviewed it and laughed so hard he choked on his coffee. It's boilerplate garbage, Elias said, but it's dangerous garbage. If you sign this, she gets 80% of the equity in the house and full protection of all independent business ventures, meaning her little fraud LLC. Can we swap the documents? I asked. Twist 5. We do better than swap, Elias said. We draft a counter-agreement. It looks identical in formatting, font, and legalese, but buried in Section 4, Paragraph B, we stipulate that any undisclosed financial assets, LLCs, or accounts discovered during or after a divorce proceeding automatically forfeit 100% of their value to the other spouse. We also include an infidelity clause that completely nullifies spousal support and mandates the cheating party assumes all marital debt. I printed Elias's version, slid it into the folder Sarah had left on the counter, and signed the last page in front of her. I trust you, I told her. Take it to the notary tomorrow. She was so eager to lock in her trap, she didn't reread the 50-page document. She signed it, got it notarized, and filed it. The trap had snapped shut, and she was the one caught inside. But I wasn't done. The financial destruction was secured, but the professional revenge required a bit more finesse. My firm, a massive corporate risk management conglomerate, had recently announced a regional expansion. We were quietly acquiring smaller supply chain and logistics vendors. I walked into my VP's office and placed a dossier on his desk. I found our prime acquisition target, I said. It's a mid-sized logistics firm, highly undervalued, struggling with cash flow, but their infrastructure is sound. We can buy them out for pennies on the dollar. It was Mark's company. Twist number 6, within 3 weeks, my firm had initiated a hostile takeover of Mark's employer. Because of my stellar research, I was put on the integration committee. I was now effectively Mark's boss. The pieces were perfectly aligned. The baby was supposedly due in 7 months. Sarah was glowing, playing the expectant mother. Mark was sweating because his company was being audited during the acquisition. Then came twist number 7. I received an email from an encrypted address. It contained 3 audio files and a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet detailed every single transaction from Apex Consulting. The audio files were arguments between Mark and Sarah. The sender wasn't a hacker. It was Chloe, my sister-in-law. I met Chloe at a diner 2 towns over. She looked exhausted but sharp. I've known for 6 months, Chloe said, stirring her coffee. I found Mark's burner phone, but I also found out he was funneling money into a joint account with Sarah. I couldn't divorce him yet because he hid the assets too well. I needed proof. I saw you looking at his iPad at the barbecue. I knew you knew. Why give this to me? I asked. Because, Chloe smiled a terrifying, beautiful smile. I want immunity. Mark used our home equity line to cover his options losses when the Apex money wasn't enough. If I blow this up now, I lose the house. I need you to crush them. But I need you to leave my half of our marital estate out of the blast radius. Deal, I said. I handed her the photo of the 23-year-old barista's text messages. Here's your leverage for your own divorce. He's cheating on Sarah too. Chloe left, took the photo, and walked out. The execution happened exactly 3 weeks later. It was Thanksgiving. Sarah had insisted on hosting. Mark and Chloe were there, along with Sarah's parents. The table was set beautifully. The turkey was carved. Sarah stood up, tapping her glass with a spoon. "We have an announcement," Sarah beamed, resting a hand on her stomach. "We're having a boy." The table erupted in cheers. Mark raised his glass, making direct eye contact with me. "Congratulations, buddy. You're going to be a great dad." I stood up, holding my own glass. "Thank you, Mark. That means a lot. Actually, I have an announcement too." I reached under my chair and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I placed it in the center of the table. "First, I want to thank Sarah for her impeccable foresight in securing our financial future with our new postnuptial agreement," I said smoothly. Sarah smiled, looking slightly confused but pleased. "Because of Section 4, Paragraph B, I am now the sole legal owner of the $40,000 you and Mark stole from me through your fraudulent Delaware LLC." The room went dead silent. Sarah's smile vanished. Mark froze, his wine glass halfway to his mouth. "Second," I continued, turning to my in-laws, "I am medically sterile, have been for years. So unless this turkey is the father, the child Sarah is carrying belongs to Mark." Sarah dropped her glass. It shattered on the hard wood. "What are you talking about? You're crazy," she shrieked, the panic instantly stripping away her polished veneer. "The forensic accounting report is in the envelope, along with the audio logs from your car," I said, my voice completely level. I turned to Mark, who was now pale and sweating profusely. "And Mark, as a senior director on the integration committee for your new parent company, I've reviewed your department's expenses. You use company funds to rent the hotel rooms for your affair. That's corporate embezzlement. HR and legal have already been notified. You will be terminated for cause on Monday, and they are pressing charges." Mark stood up, knocking his chair backward. "You son of a bitch." "Chloe." I looked at my sister-in-law, who was calmly eating her mashed potatoes. "Anything to add?" Chloe wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Just that I filed for divorce this morning, Mark, and I sent Sarah the screenshots of your texts with the barista. Happy Thanksgiving." Sarah spun to look at Mark. "The barista? You told me I was the only one." The sheer absurdity of my cheating wife getting mad at her affair partner for cheating on her was the most delicious thing I have ever witnessed. I didn't stick around for the screaming match. I grabbed my pre-packed duffel bag from the hall closet, walked out the front door, and drove to a luxury hotel where I had booked a suite for the week. The fallout was a masterpiece of legal and financial destruction. Because Sarah had signed the modified post-nup, she forfeited everything. The infidelity clause triggered, wiping out any chance of alimony. The identity theft regarding the LLC was leveraged by my lawyer. We told her she could either walk away with zero equity in the house and assume all marital debt, or I would take the evidence of federal tax fraud and identity theft to the police. She signed the divorce papers so fast she nearly tore the paper. Mark's life imploded even harder. He was fired for cause, losing his unvested stock and his severance. My company's legal team reported his embezzlement to the authorities. Chloe took him to the cleaners in their divorce, using the leverage I gave her to keep the house and force him to assume his options trading debts. Sarah tried to move in with Mark, but since Mark was broke, unemployed, and facing criminal charges, that relationship imploded within a month. Update 6 months later. The divorce was finalized last week. I kept the house, my retirement, and every cent they tried to steal. I sold the house immediately and used the equity to buy a beautiful condo downtown, closer to work. Sarah is currently living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with her parents. The baby is due in a few weeks. Mark is working night shifts at a warehouse, ironically a warehouse owned by a competitor of my firm, trying to pay off his legal fees. He's still facing potential jail time for the corporate embezzlement. Last Tuesday, I got a pathetic rambling voicemail from Sarah. She was crying, apologizing, saying she made the biggest mistake of her life, and asking if we could just talk. I didn't block her number. I didn't text her back. I simply forwarded the voicemail to Mark's new email address with the subject line, "Your problem now?" Then I poured myself a glass of scotch, walked out onto my balcony, and enjoyed the quiet.